Welcome back to the Anvil. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about things that go on behind the scenes in blacksmithing, and that's history and science. And I always tell people that for about 2 years before I even made my first forge, I studied metallurgy, so I understood what was going on with the different metals coming together, what composition made steel and stainless steel, and how those things worked. And there's so many myths in blacksmithing. And so today, what I actually want to talk about is math. I remember in geometry being one of those kids, oh, hey, what am I ever going to do this for? Why am I studying this? I thought it sucked. But when I make a project, I always research it just because it's kind of part of the hobby to me. And so when I made that pole arm, the pole axe, I just researched historical uses, why and how it was made the way it was. Did a little bit of research on techniques on how to use it, so I could design the best possible tool, knowing how it would be implemented. And one of the things I came across was a guy who was talking about medieval weaponry, and he said, axes sucked in combat. And he came up with all sorts of ideas. One thing he said was that, like, if you have a sword and you hit, if this is a sword, I can hit anywhere along here because it's all edge. With this is my only edge. He's like, if you hit here, it's just a stick. Well, it's a stick with a really heavy piece of metal on top of it. So it's still probably going to break bones, especially if I hit your shoulder. Your clavicle breaks pretty easy, and it's extremely painful. So that's one thing. Also, if you hit and then you pull, okay, now I limb trap, right? At bare minimum, a limb trap. Possibly worse, depends on the hook to your blade. I have this. This was the first axe that I ever made, and actually made a little bit of a mistake with it. I was more focused on punching the eye than this part, and I didn't really know what I was doing with it. And so what I ended up doing was having a very straight edge. And with a straight edge, you have to hit at 90 degrees, right? When you hit something, that's why you want to hit, like with a hammer, you hit straight down onto whatever it is that you're trying to hit with a hammer. With an axe, it's a little bit more difficult to land 90-degree hits with it. And that is why it's curved. Because circles actually give you more, a geometric advantage, I'll call it that. What happens is, no matter where you hit with a circle, you're hitting at 90 degrees. So with a straight edge like this one, if I hit here, what's going to happen is the weight of my strike is going to go this way. It's going to be a glancing blow. But with a circle, I'm hitting on this part, and just like with like a cavalry saber, why it was curved like that, if I hit here, this part wants to pop up, and because of this part of the axe being bent this way, it wants to give a drawing cut this way, which evens out and gives you a 90-degree strike. It's also why shields were circular, so that you could hit with them. And no matter how you hit, you would get the most punch for the most bang for your effort. So this axe has that nice shape to it. This axe has that shape to it. It really keeps it so that however you hit, you're getting the most force into your strike. And that's an important thing to know when you are making tools. You have to understand that if I hit something, a log, how's that going to react? Because if a guy's just using an axe to chop a tree, it's not that big of a deal if you don't get 100% impact. On a war axe, you would want to have a lot more power. even on just chopping trees and logs, I used to use this to break up all sorts of stuff to use in my charcoal forge. I don't want to waste energy. I want a tool that takes all of my energy and puts it into my work. Same reason we want a nice hard anvil, so it's not robbing you of energy and making your work harder than it needs to be. So, axes, circles, right? There's always science behind the fun. And just because I'm a nerd, the dude's out of his mind. If you move away from me or closer to me in the middle of a swing, dude, if a guy knows how to use an axe and you're fighting him, it's not going to be fun. And so axes are good weapons in a pinch. And speaking of axes as weapons, I did put Nordic runes on this one because I was making basically a Nordic war axe, which I now learned I messed up. But that's okay. It was just something that I was doing for fun anyway. But the bearded axe, everyone says that Vikings, which were actually Nords, right? There's no Viking people. There's the Nordic people, and Vikinger was actually the word for raiding. So the Vikings were literally raiders. They weren't a people, they weren't a culture. They were just Nords that were raiding. And so what they would use is, this would be, I don't know, a farmer or a woodworker, a shipwright, whatever, would have his wood axe. Most people would probably have a wood axe. And the reason that it was bearded was not so that you could hook a shield. Now, yes, it works great. And with this, like I was saying before, if you would get a limb trap here, but it'd be really difficult to do on a moving target just because it's so tight. And this is a very small axe because, like I said, it was the first axe I ever forged. This is actually for woodworking. So if I were using this to make a handle, I could put my hand inside of that beard and I could shave, taking off my handle of that, but I could shave with more control. It's just like when you have a knife and you want to be able to have your finger on the back of it. And so that's really what that's for. The beard is not this mystical weapon of war. The bearded axe is for woodworking. Works great at pulling a shield. That's human ingenuity. We are really clever at coming up with ways to kill one another. So, the whole point of that was there are tools that are specifically designed for specific things. You got to know what you're making, how it's going to be used, because there is no one thing that can do everything. And, toward the end of the medieval period, axes were straight, and they weren't sharp, because they were made for crushing plate mail. Different tool. Wouldn't work to cut wood anymore. Wouldn't really even work to cut off someone's limbs particularly, but it would work great to crush plate. And that's what it was designed to do. So, there's a lot more that goes into stuff than people just coming up with random things, and understanding what and why and how is a really big deal when you start making things. So, thanks for stopping by the Anvil today. Have fun, go make something.